Just before we go, Neil wanted to say something a little bit about brushes. So, Neil, what you've got some brushes there, I see.
Yes, I have. So again, a lot of people ask the question about, what brushes can I use for oil painting? Can I use my watercolor brushes? Can I use my acrylic brushes? Or if I'm going to the shop or if I'm ordering online, what should I be looking for? There is a kind of a major difference really between oil brushes and certainly things like watercolor or acrylic brushes. Normally you find that obviously watercolor and acrylic are very fine haired brushes. The first thing to say is definitely do not use your best watercolor brushes, your Kolinsky Sable brushes for oil painting, because the cleaning process could be very, very harsh on those brushes. And if you're spending, literally several £100 on a high quality watercolor brush, you definitely wouldn't want to then jab it all with oil. So these are just the standard paintbrush for oils. And normally oil paintbrushes are made with a hog hair, a bristle. I think I'm pretty sure you can get a sort of an animal-free version of that. And then in terms of options of styles, and this confuses a lot of people, there really are two main choices, and that's between filberts and flats or brights. So some artists will choose to paint with a flat or a bright, and that's got a chopped square top to it. And it can be lovely. You can produce some very, very nice marks. You'll see some oil painters will paint with very angular lines and very angular shapes, and they'll build up a presentation in their painting using very sharp delineated edges. But the more classical form is to use what's called a filbert, which basically is a rounded brush. It's got a rounded tip, and it doesn't matter whether that's a smaller brush or a larger brush. So filberts, I would say, generally are the choice that I would aim for, and I recommend people to use, because with a filbert you can get different shapes that you can't create necessarily with a flat or a bright. And the other thing with those brushes is you've also got then different areas on the brush that you can work with. You can work with the brush flat, so you're almost as if it's the rounded end of your finger. You can use the very, very tip of the brush if you're stippling. You can turn the brush sideways, so you've got the thinner profile, and that then almost becomes like working with a thinner brush. So for example, that's a size 6, that's a size 2. And if I put those side by side, you can see what sort of size they are. If I turn that brush sideways, you can see that that's, although it's slightly splayed because it's been used quite a bit, that size 6 on its edge is almost the same thickness as a size 2 brush. So generally what I say to people, if you're working with oil, choose a bristle brush. Try, if you can, get a better quality brush, because it's going to last. And when you're cleaning brushes or after working with oil, you're either using spirit or you're using soap and water. And there's a few rules which we'll talk about again at some point about how to best clean your brushes. And bristle brushes are just that little bit more robust. Certainly you can use acrylic brushes, but the acrylic brush has got a much softer fiber to it, so it doesn't hold the paint in quite the same way, and it also doesn't, it's great for blending. I mean, sometimes I'll use an acrylic brush when I'm painting very small if I'm trying to blend something, but in general you want to be using a hog bristle or some sort of bristle alternative brush rather than a synthetic or an acrylic brush.
Brilliant. That was really useful. And for this 45-minute Arty class, if they don't want to purchase a huge set of different brushes, just three or so brushes would probably be.
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about a few different sizes. I mean, six is a is a good size brush. You can go sort of a 6 to an 8, maybe a couple of smaller ones. I think on the list, I wasn't sure whether I mentioned it, maybe a size 2, because when we start to get into some smaller detail, it might be nice just to use a smaller brush. So, I mean, in this instance, I would say probably for the lesson, and I'm using a slightly bigger canvas here just so it's easier for students to see. But I would guess, I mean, I've got a size 5 there, a size 6, and a size 2. I mean, a 5 and a 6 are fairly close to each other, so you could maybe go with a 4. A 6, a 4, and a 2 would probably be a good choice. But you definitely don't need to use too many brushes. And of course, the other big thing as well is the more brushes you use when you paint, the more you've got to clean up when you finish.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you again, Neil. That was great, and we'll probably put links to some suggested products probably on Amazon or wherever, just to help you if you are looking to make a few little purchases to help with this class. You may already have them. We don't know. Anyway, thanks again, Neil, and we'll speak later. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, John.